Hello. It's Halloween today, as you can tell by how spooky and creepy it is outside. Okay, that's a lie. It is beautiful outside. And I know this is something that's really stupid to complain about, but I really love creepy, fall, cold weather that we get back home. It has gotten a little bit colder here, which I really do like because my body takes the slightest increase in temperature as an opportunity to sweat like crazy. Um, so the slightly cooler fall weather that we're having now gives me an opportunity to wear short sleeve shirts outside and still be comfortable. Um, Even though people look at me like I'm some sort of crazy person that will die of hypothermia at 10 degrees Celsius. It's great that they're concerned. I do appreciate that. So one other difference between Canada and Korea, other than the non-existent fall here, is that in Canada around September or October, when the first cold weather starts, the mosquitoes become docile and perhaps develop a little seasonal affective disorder, and they just stop biting and they sit on the walls, just kind of depressed and docile, and I guess think about mosquito things. And at this time of year, they seem so pathetic that I forget that I've been battling them for several months, and usually I just let them be. In Jeju, on the other hand, Korean mosquitoes seem to begin doing meth in the fall and become much more vicious and persistent than they have been during the summer months. And this is saying something, as during the summer months they are also pretty crazy. I feel like in Canada, when you swat at a mosquito, it, out of self-preservation, flies away and doesn't bother you for at least a few minutes. However, in Korea, when you swat at a mosquito, it seems to come back 5 seconds later, having no sense of self-preservation, perhaps just wanting to inflict itchiness and pain and anguish upon its victims. There seems to be no will to survive, just some sort of evil douchebaggery. But anyways, it's Halloween today, so I thought I would talk about Halloween in Korea. It doesn't exist. So, okay, that's not entirely true. In Itaewon, in Seoul, there's a huge Halloween party every year, but that's mostly due to the sheer number of foreigners who live there. Through the rest of Korea, as far as I know, Halloween isn't really celebrated. Now, I love Halloween, but not for the candy or for the parties. What I love are the horror movies. So I was surprised to find out that Korea is a little different when it comes to horror movies. Many Koreans, in my experience, love horror movies, but typically the Korean tradition is to watch horror movies during the summer months rather than in the fall. In North America, around Halloween is the time of year that we watch scary movies. In addition to Halloween being thematically scary as it's full of ghosts and monsters and sexy nurses, Halloween is during autumn, which is a pretty eerie time of year in my experience. The days are shorter, it's darker, colder. Essentially, it's the ideal weather conditions to be stabbed in an alley by a stranger wearing a mask. Beyond that, the leaves have fallen, causing the trees to look like gnarled skeletal hands coming out of the ground. So I think it's only natural that at this time of year, given that it's dark and dismal and depressing, that we pontificate upon death and reflect on our own mortality. And what better way to entertain such existential questions than by watching some people die on a TV screen? Essentially, I think the reason for this tradition is that the feeling outside, the atmosphere, the mood is spooky, so why not add to it a little by watching a scary movie? On the other hand, in Korea, horror is typically popular during the summer months, and this seems strange to me because it is so bright and cheerful outside that I assume that in order to get close to the appropriate atmosphere for watching horror films, you'd have to build some sort of fort out of blankets and pillows to block out the sunlight, or watch the movie in some sort of dungeon, or a movie theater would probably make more sense. Beyond that, you don't have the presence of seasonal affective disorder to really take the dark atmosphere of the movie to the next level. But the reasoning behind watching horror movies during the sweaty summer months is just that. Because it's so hot outside, you watch horror movies, and the chill that you get sent down your spine by the horror movie chills your entire body. So the prevalent thought is that you watch a scary movie during the summer months to scare yourself cold. Another reason for this could be that it is ridiculously hot in Korea during the summer months. So an air-conditioned movie theater paired with spine-tingling chills is a good reason to drive people to the theater. This trend of watching horror movies during the summer is very new in Korea, starting only in the early 2000s. And before this, horror movies didn't perform so well in Korea. Now, upon hearing that this was a trend in Korea, I was entirely baffled, as it seems ridiculous that one would want to watch horror movies when it's so bright and cheerful outside. It's like when it's a beautiful day outside and you're inside watching TV and there's that little voice inside you telling you that you're wasting your life. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the idea of watching horror films during the eerie fall had reigned uncontested in my mind. It was an idea that just seemed natural to me until I was exposed to the idea of watching horror films in the summer. While on the one hand, it makes sense to match your film of choice to be congruent with the atmosphere outside, creepy plus creepy, but there's also something to be said for introducing a horror film to juxtapose the brightness and cheerfulness of the outdoors during the summer months, to break up the happiness with some casual dismemberment. I guess my conclusion, and what I'm trying to say, is that some ideas just seem natural to you until you're exposed to a new way of thinking. And while the topic of what time of year to watch a horror film might not be all that revelatory or important, it's just an example of how being exposed to different ways of thinking can change your perspective. Being someone who loves horror films and the psychology behind them, I find it interesting that the times of year that are more culturally acceptable to watch horror films change in different cultures. So go forth and watch a scary film, no matter what the time of year. It's likely appropriate somewhere. It's like the saying, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, except you're watching a scary movie instead of justifying your alcoholism. Okay, thanks for watching. On the... It's so windy.